Hi, my name's John Freund. I sometimes describe myself as a refugee from cyberspace. And as they say, the rest is history. For the last quarter of a century, I've been doing stuff. I pioneered the Vincentian Family website in 1997. Actually, that was a website that began for the Congregation of the Mission and their General Assembly. One of the things that strikes me is that we need to recognize that it's hard to explain to a person who's been blind from birth or colorblind what a sunset looks like. And that's a little bit of what you're running into. You've got to get somehow into the experience where you can unpack it and point out. I mean, as much as I joke about, or they joke about me, that when they're closing the casket on me, that I'm going to say, wait a second, I got another email to finish. I'm not comfortable with Twitter and Facebook. I use it barely. I'm an email dinosaur. But what I've seen myself in this past 25 years has been as a bridge person between two groups of people, the technological people and what I call the charism people, or the people who are specialists in what is this Vincentian spirit all about. And I know enough about technology to be able to give them a translation of rudimentary concepts of it. And I know enough about the charism to be able to try to speak about it, to people who this is a whole new language. And that's what I think we need to develop, is people who have that ability to bridge these two worlds. I just think that's very important. And without that, people are just going to look and they're not going to see. Alexa, play Dave Brubeck jazz.
Shuffling jazz songs by Dave Brubeck on Amazon Music.
I was going to write something for this week for the Province website on Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol, and Charles Dickens as a voice of the poor, because what he basically did is he himself was poor and he needed money at the time. So he did what he did best, was write, and he wrote about what he knew best was his experience as a poor person. And that was the origin of the characters of Ebenezer Scrooge and all of the others in there. And as I thought about that more, I began to think about, wait a second, artists have always been this voice of the poor. Helping people see what they don't normally see. And that got me thinking, and as it did what I do best, is I've never had a course in technology whatsoever, but what I do know is how to point and click, and I do a lot of surfing. And so I went immediately to the internet and realized that we've got a long tradition of using art to express a different insight into the poor. I don't know if you're familiar with the story about a man who comes along to a shore and he sees all people there and they're all agitated and they're pointing to somebody who's in the water and they're saying, he's drowning, he's drowning. So he jumps in the water, swims out, rescues, brings the guy in, dries him off, and everybody's happy. And then all of a sudden, there's another one there, and he jumps in the water again and does the same thing. He does this 3 times, 4 times, and there's another one coming down, and all of a sudden, instead of jumping in, he walks upstream. And they say, aren't you going to jump in? And his response in my head is well, why don't you jump in? I want to go upstream and find out who's throwing them in. And Vincent was that kind of a systems doer. When Vincent started doing all of the fabulous things that he was doing, he distributed through his collaborators billions of dollars in today's money, to the poor. And when he did that, he didn't want people to know about it. And so when the missioners would write letters back to him about the plight of the poor and what they were doing to alleviate the plight of the poor, how they were shelling out the money to help the people, he felt that was a violation of humility to talk about that. Until one day he connected the dots that, wait a second, when I tell the story of the suffering that our priests are encountering and how they are relieving it, people give money and support. And so from forbidding the use of letters, the media of that day, forbidding the use of letters to tell the story, he began to reproduce the letters and circulate the letters among the better off people. And that's what led, to him raising all of the funds that came in there. So what I try to do with my peers is to say, we're just doing this in a different way, today. Vincent, the media of his day was the letter. And he finally realized that reproducing these letters was, reaching people. And to say then the step, is that what we've got to realize is that these various media opportunities are just new ways of doing the same thing that we've done all along. And as I pointed out in the article that you folks generated out of me, was that when I reflected on Vincent, Vincent was evangelized by artists. He was evangelized by the account in Luke, where Luke records that Jesus unrolls the scroll in the temple and says, I have been sent to bring good news to the poor. And here's a writer telling the story that became Vincent's mission statement and the mission statement, of all of those who followed him. What just popped into my head is what Bob Maloney said to me a number of times, coraggio, which is Italian for courage. Hang in there. Be patient with us and struggle. Believe in the vision that you've got. But don't just write us off. Take us by the hand and bring us with you. This is nothing new. It's, the missionary principle. You've got to learn the language. If you want to minister to this age, you've got to learn the language and the culture. That doesn't mean that everything in the language and the culture is right. Far from it. And we're seeing some of that today. But you've got to learn the language. You've got to be in it to win it, as the saying goes. It's the experience of the poor that transforms you. And that's what I think is so powerful in your videos, the videos that you show. They spoke out of the contact that the the producers of the videos, they must have had some contact with that and entered into that situation. And then they used their artistic talents to tell that story, to make the connections. It's all about connections.